Hey guys, Jim with Jeffrey here. So today I want to talk about the lockout component of squats and deadlifts. Now the lockout is essentially the last component of the movement where you're finishing off the lift. Now most lifters, they're looking to be explosive. At lockout they're trying to get a snappy finish, and what happens is it causes lumbar hyperextension, or also known as overarching of the lower back. So that happens as, if you can imagine on squats, you're coming out of the hole and say they throw their chest back to get a snappy lockout. The chest moves at a rate faster than what the back is moving at, and as a result it will cause hyperextension. Now you can see if I do some demonstrations, I'll start in a high bar position for you guys. So normal high bar position, coming down to the hole, no issues. Now coming out of the hole, at lockout, which is about, say, this part here, lockout, they throw the torso back, chest raise up, and causes hyperextension. One more time, no issues coming out of the hole, no issue, flat back, strong back. Then at lockout, about this part, they throw the torso back to get a snappy lockout. And I'm sure you guys can see my lower back would arch. Now if I switch into a low bar position, a similar thing would happen. Come into the hole, no issues. Come back out of the hole, and at this point, at lockout, they throw the chest back, causing arching. One more time. So you guys will see that. Let me just rack this bar. So I'm sure you guys saw there that as I was at lockout point, when I was coming out of that hole, because I threw my chest back, I essentially moved my torso back, chest raising faster than the speed of my chest, caused hyperextension. Now this is a similar thing in deadlifts as well. At the deadlift part, so if you guys can imagine, this is me coming out of, doing a deadlift, coming out to lockout, and I do a similar thing where I throw my chest back, throw my torso back to get that snappy lockout. What happens is a similar thing to squats, where you get an overarching of that back. So I'll do a demonstration for the deadlifts here. I won't slap on plates, but if you can imagine, this is my starting deadlift position, coming out at a point at about my knees, where it's lockout's about to occur. I throw my chest back to get a snappy lockout, and what happens is, same thing, I get hyperextension of that lumbar. So I think you guys have quite a good understanding of why lumbar hyperextension occurs now in the squats and deadlifts lockout section. Oh, it's a hot day today. But so now we're going to go on how to fix it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the reason that people do that movement is because they want a quick lockout. They want an explosive lockout. They have lockout for squats and deads. They throw that chest back because they think that's going to finish off the movement. That's going to get them into that upright position, where that final finish locked out 3-wide lats position. Now the thing is, I'll start with deadlifts first. So if you can imagine, say, to get into this starting position, I push my hips back. So say so if you guys can imagine the bars on the ground, first, to get into that setup position, I have to perform a hip hinge, and I have to push my hips back. So that's the only reason I was able to get into this position, is because I moved my hips out of the way, I moved my hips back. Now, if you think about it, we have to do the opposite at lockout. So I'm coming out, so instead of moving the torso back, we will drive our hips through to achieve that lockout. So essentially what I'm trying to get at is to do the movement in reverse. So if I was in this hip, so starting to get into my starting position, hips back. Coming out lockout, we want to do the reverse. So coming out at the knees, doing a lockout, we want to do the reverse. We're going to drive our hips through to return them to that starting position, instead of shooting the torso back to get into that starting position. Now, same thing with squats. Get into a squat position for you guys. Start with the low bar position. So I'll probably make a video on this later on, but with squats, even though there is minimal hip hinge back, there is still, your hips still go back. It has to happen. It has to happen. So because even though knee break, hip break occurs almost simultaneously for low bar squats, my hips still travel back as a result. So when we do the reverse, coming out of the hole, instead of throwing the torso back, bring the hips through. Coming out of the hole, hips through. Beautiful. So essentially the one fix for hyperextension due to being too exposed to come in a whole lockout on squats and deadlifts is to do the movement in reverse. So instead of throwing the torso back to lockout, instead bring point B, bring the hips through. So essentially do a hip thrust through. That's why they say for like squats and deadlifts, it's a two-part. Treat it as part one leg press where you're pushing the ground away, and part two a hip thrust, so you're doing a lockout of the hips. Yeah, so that's all for me today on lockouts for squats and deadlifts. Hope that was helpful for you guys, and I'll catch you next time.